Hi everybody, Colin Stevenson here, joined with my hero and my sensei, John Lenhart. Hi John.
Hi.
Now today we are talking about contrastive thinking. It's something that a lot of people are going to need to learn about in order to have more peace in their life. Now our last video was done on truth, and that is part of a mini-series that we're going to carry on with. Now in order to get to truth, we're going to have to understand contrastive thinking, and then it will take us to humility, the video that we did a couple of weeks ago. John, would you like to tell us some more, please?
Right. So contrastive thinking is really the only way to know if something is truth. And it's the opposite of the way our conscious brain thinks. So what we do is we think comparatively. If this matches this, then it must be true. Dan Brown wrote a novel, The Da Vinci Code. It's a master of comparative thinking. Hey, this architecture looks like this. It must be because of this. And everybody feels like it's the truth. That is not how you prove truth. You prove it contrastively. So the way I say this is, all you know for sure is what isn't true. So if I drove a Camry and I wanted to convince you I drove a Corvette, I'd tell you everything that was the same that compares with a Camry and a Corvette. And as I told you more and more things, it would look more like I drove a Corvette and you would feel more convinced. However, all it takes is for me to say one thing that isn't the same with a Camry and a Corvette, and you know for sure I don't drive a Corvette.
Right, okay, so what we're needing to do is we're needing to ask more questions to get a better understanding. Would you say that that helps? And then you would obviously putting, again, what you say, all we know is what we don't know, because some people try and piece things together like a jigsaw and it doesn't fit, but they'll try and force it together in order to believe that truth.
Right. So the issue is that we need to ask more questions, but it's the perspective we ask it from. We all have a bias. Everybody knows that. Yeah. And I've read so many articles that say, and there's nothing you can do about your bias, or here's 12 things you can do about your bias. One thing, there's only one thing you have to do to fix your bias, and that is pretend someone else said or believes what you believe. Here's the killer in all of this. Everyone in the world is an expert at being contrastive on other people.
Yeah.
Everyone in the world completely avoids being contrastive on themselves. So the goal in being contrastive is to try to prove the opposite point. And I'll give you a classic example. A play was written about this, in fact. In 1986, the shuttle, the Challenger, took off, blew up.
Yep.
And what happened was a room full of engineers and scientists, before the shuttle was going to launch, they had this piece of data, they had this sheet of paper, they looked at it and they said, can we launch the shuttle safely? And they looked at the sheet of paper and said, yes. They launch a shuttle, it blows up. They all look at the same sheet of paper and say, is the shuttle going to blow up? Yes, it is going to blow up. Same sheet of paper.
Yeah.
Now, who do you fault? Everybody's like, whose fault was this? The same sheet of paper said it was safe and you could blow it up. And this is why we go back to truth. It's a fact it's safe. It's a fact it's going to blow up. What's the truth?
Yes.
There is a context where it won't blow up, so it's safe. No. So that's why this is so important. Truth it exists, it's going to happen. And the question is, do you want to know the truth or do you want your way? And if you want to know the truth, you will pretend someone else said it. I had people say, John, I just can't be contrastive. I said, write down whatever you believe and now pretend I said it, because people love to be contrastive on me. And they just smile and go, oh, I could do that.
Now, if I was to say, now we spoke about this in the last video, so if you were to say something to me and I was to say something to you, You and I seem to have a certain understanding of each other. We've never met in person. We'll just put this out there to the world. We've never met in person. We feel each other's energy through truth. We feel it through contrastive thinking, and we just understand because there's that flow on both sides. Now, if I was to say something to you and you wouldn't get contrastive because you understand that you would be able to ask me a different perspective on that, which would allow me to get to my truth and I have the humility to be able to say, oh, do you know what? I'm completely wrong here because what you've said has just triggered that within my brain. People don't allow this to happen. They don't allow, when the question comes out, they don't ask the question first of all. And then when they ask the question, it hurts other people so much. So it kind of goes back to previous videos that we've done. Like, contrastive thinking can hurt the brain. And it's the hurt of the brain that throws people off and they think that that's then a lie. Would you agree with that?
I think you said so many things, and I agree with it. But I think I can actually follow this one. In the last video, you said a 3-dimensional point, and I just took one point. You know, the lie and honest point, which, again, you know, in that Ricky Gervais movie you mentioned last time, was being honest creating anything? It wasn't creating anything. So that's why truth is above being honest. So now let's take this example, because we'll go back to you and I. It wasn't always like that with us. So what would happen is you would say something, and if I wanted to be contrastive on you, I'd go, nope, I know a context where what you're saying isn't right. But what I did was I was contrastive on me. So when you said something, when we first met through video and you talked, I went, okay, wait a minute. Where could he be right? What is a context where Colin could be right? And so then I would ask a question to see if you were talking about that context versus another context. So it is more questions, like you said, but from what perspective am I coming from? Am I asking a question to try to prove you wrong, which we're all really good at doing, or am I asking you a question to try to prove you right? And that's different. So I kept asking you questions to try to prove you right. When you said something different, I showed you the contradiction, and you were humble enough to go, okay, that's not it. And I showed you, you know, you could be right if you meant this context, because here's how this fit together. Yeah. Now, what really happened was you are what I call a truth savant. So you feel the truth because you are in touch with your unconscious brain. Yeah. When you say something that's the truth, you feel it. When you say something that's not the truth, you go, that doesn't feel right. So you, through experience, are following a path of truth. I told you I could tell you why what you're doing is the truth. You didn't know why it was the truth. You didn't know the how and the why, but you were in touch with your unconscious brain. So you don't need me to live a life of truth if you're in touch with your unconscious brain. And all I'm going to do is put words to your feelings. So that's all I did. It was everything I kept telling you was I kept explaining to you why and how what you're doing is the truth. And then your unconscious went, yes. And then we became close friends because your unconscious brain loves me.
Yeah. And this is why, if we could start talking about friendship, and I think we should maybe do a video on friendship, because that can be taken to different levels. And in fact, you know what, that we'll make a date for that. But the reason that I'm open, I never used to be, because we can go back to star signs, we can go back to fixed signs, and all these things through Western astrology that we are told that this is our traits. You're stubborn, you won't move. And I had to contrastively think everything in my life in order, and I'm talking things from childhood all the way through, the way that I live my life. It's not contrastive in this conversation. I had to contrastively think of my behaviors, how I acted in previous relationships, how I acted. I had to go back. And that people talk about this inner work, but they don't realize that inner work is contrastively thinking through old behaviors, through old thought processes, through, you know, old actions and habits. So if we're talking truth and we want to live our truth, we actually have to go back and rewrite the program to a degree where we start again.
Right. So we need to be humble, and you'd said that earlier. So notice how contrastive thinking matches with humility. I need to be able to consider how I could be wrong from the inside, which means the way to do that is contrastive. What's a way I could be wrong? If someone else said this, how would I prove them wrong? So that's humility. And we said, if you can't be contrastive, if you can't be humble, you'll be humiliated, because the reason why you'll be humiliated is the truth is going to win out. And then you're not going to be able to fight it, and it'll come from the outside. And then everybody's going to go, and you thought what? And then you're going to have to change. So that's why that happens from the outside. Now, contrastive thinking cleans out the brain. It's the healthiest thing for your brain. The healthiest thing you could do every day is take 20 minutes, pick a deeply held belief, something you just believe absolutely one way, there's no way this can be wrong, and take 20 minutes and think how it could be wrong. You're not going to agree that it's wrong. You're not going to say it's wrong. How could what you really believe be wrong? And that reverses, the sympathetic and parasympathetic system, and it heals your brain, it backflushes your brain. And so what happens is that's the inner work you're talking about, is looking back on your childhood, looking back and stuff and saying, how could that have been wrong? How could it, and really looking at it honestly, factually, yep. And then taking that other perspective. The problem is to take the other perspective and say, now, how could I have been wrong? You just do it inside. You don't have to share with anybody. You don't have to admit anything. But that's the real work, because, again, everything's going to come down to, do you want to know the truth, or do you want to prove your point? Yeah. Because your point is wrong. It's wrong. I mean, I can sit here and prove a point, but I don't have it all the way to complete truth. And I need to constantly be open to somebody saying, hey, when somebody comes up with a tough case, I love it. Yeah. Because it's going to stress my model. My model only gets better when I'm wrong. I'm not happy when the model fits it, because I know my model's not 100% truth, and I'm trying to make it better. But you will see it instantly. And on LinkedIn, on Facebook especially, you're not going to see humble people. You're not going to see people contrastive. You're not going to see, you can ask a contrastive point. You can ask them to be contrastive. And like we said, they're going to be in pride, and they can't even consider they could be wrong.
And when we're going through life, and we're talking about that inner work. Now, we talked about earlier, and we'll go into this in another video another time, about being shown the process to enlightenment, ABC, but is it CAB? And, we're shown things, Now, when we're not able to do that inner work because we've not been shown the process, how to do it. I mean, the amount of people that I've heard, I'm doing the inner work just now, they've been doing the inner work for the last 10 years. And it's just processing. And all they're doing is reflecting in the situation, right? There's a difference between reflecting and contrastive thinking. And people say, oh, I've been thinking about it and I'm trying to let it go, but they're still reflecting. So they still believe that they were in the right. If two people are falling out in a relationship and one person believes the other person was wrong for everything that they did, they're never going to be, that inner work's never going to be done, and they're never going to be able to let go of it. However, if they say, but you know what, if I said that and they said that to me, I would probably have felt like that. So then that allows them to see that they were wrong. And as I say, they don't have to speak out loud so they feel humiliated, but they're now humbled by, I shouldn't have done that. And that allows that to release from their unconscious brain.
There's no reason why it should take 10 years to do inner work. You're just wearing yourself out until you're willing to be contrastive. Now, let's take the case you just did, which is great. This person believes this person believes this. So they push against each other, and they can expend all their energy, push like this for 10 years. And where are they going to be in 10 years?
Tired.
Tired and right here. So I like to use a tactic when I argue with people called weed killer. And this is a real samurai, ultra samurai technique. the weed killers that are out today, they don't work by being a herbicide. They don't work by killing the weed. They are a fertilizer. So there's 5 aspects of this weed that has to grow together to be a weed. They fertilize 3 aspects of it, grow it faster than the other 2 can keep up, and it dies under its own weight.
Yeah.
So when I have this situation with people, what I do, again, the respect, I try to understand them so I can explain it to their benefit. And then I fertilize the argument. I agree with them, and that opens people up. When I'm arguing with somebody and I try to understand them, they're like, you're trying to understand me. And they start explaining it, and it's, again, comparative, and I'm understanding them. They feel like they're winning. And so when they get all done, I go, okay, so how would that apply in this case? Or how would that apply long-term? I always go big picture or long-term. When I do that, if it's not the truth, it's going to die. In fact, everything that's not the truth will die. Some of their model might be truth. The reason their model, when people present a model, the amount of truth has to equal the amount that's not true or be greater for it to exist. What I like to do is grow the weed, grow their model, and the part that's the weed dies, and they got to drop it, or they got to try to support it more. And that's what I do. I kill it. I agree with them, and I take it into other contexts, big picture, or I take it down the road, and it's over. So if you think about it, it's like me saying, hey, why don't we, you want to go this way? Let's go this way. And we get there and it falls apart. Okay, now, so this could have been done in a day, but this can be done for 10 years.
Yep.
So there's no reason why anyone needs 10 years to reach enlightenment.
Yeah, and it's this healing process, and while we're just talking about this enlightenment, we may as well talk about the healing process for people. Now, for me, healing is, again, that contrastive thinking. I've never used that terminology because, again, I'm not one for words, but what I've done is exactly what we've spoken about today. Now, the healing process, again, allows people to hurt themselves further, because what they do is they use the healing process as their excuse for acting badly or holding on, or the traumas allowing them to act this way or stop them moving on, or these, people can actually let go so much through contrastive thinking and actually make their life heal from the past right up to the present, and then moving forward healthily with this. I mean, it's literally a life-saving. It's life-saving, life-changing.
Right. So this is the last thing I want to say about this. And I'm going to explain to you everything you just said, what's really going on in the brain. So here's what's happening is there are 4 principles that you need to use together to determine the truth.
Yep.
Causality, non-contradiction, growth mindset, and contrastive thinking. Now, growth mindset is not, I'm open to growing. Growth mindset is proven when somebody points out your contradiction. So if somebody points out your contradiction and you do everything other than go, oh, okay, I'll accept that. You are not growth mindset.
Yep.
Don't even start with me. Okay. I can prove who's growth mindset by pointing out their contradiction. So your unconscious brain works according to all 4 of these. Your conscious brain works according to 2, non-contradiction and causality. So everybody's conscious brain works to non-contradiction, causality. Our brain works according to comparative thinking, which is also sort of contrastive thinking. And our brain works according to fixed mindset, which is I'm going to justify why I'm still right, even though you proved me wrong. Everybody in the world is either moving towards these 4 and getting their brain in touch. And in fact, I learned that when people do this, what it symbolizes is my peace, my unconscious and conscious being together. So if you're moving towards growth mindset, being open to hearing about your contradictions, and contrastive thinking, being able to argue somebody else's point, you're going to feel peace and you're going to have that enlightenment. Or you're moving to this. And we've already talked about this. The Bush and Kerry example You know, the people who, 24 Bush supporters, 24 Kerry supporters in 2004 watched their candidate make a contradiction, and their brain didn't recognize it and rewarded them for looking for it. They are damaging their brain to not work the causality, not work the non-contradiction. Lying is contradictory. Lying is reversing causality. So when you lie, you are damaging your brain. And when you effort towards away from the truth, you are damaging your brain and getting further and hurting yourself. If you are humble and growth mindset, contrastive thinking, it'll be back together. So that's what every path everybody's on. I'm always trying to measure these two things. I'll point out someone's contradiction, and if they freak out, I know they're at least here. And then when I find out that they can't even see a contradiction,
that's where we know. No, honestly, and I think this video is going to touch people on different levels, and it's going to allow them to see almost a path out of their brain, because everyone's doing this kind of circular, it's like a running track, and they're just going round and round. But the contrastive thinking allows them to actually come outside that and move on, and it is peace, it is quiet, it is love, it's all the things that people want, but just taught in a way where it's actually doable, so it's great. So thank you so much for today, John. That's been absolutely fantastic, and I cannot wait to hear the comments for contrastive thinking. It's been great, and I'll see you next week. Take care.
bye.
Bye bye.